But
it's a humanitarian atrocity. Somewhere like 20 or 30,000 civilians have been slaughtered in Ukraine thanks to Russia's invasion, and that's not even considering all of the Russian and Ukrainian soldiers, just innocent working class people that have been, murdered as a result of this conflict.
But
yes, that doesn't. I mean, that doesn't mean I think America should be.
This is the U.S. intelligence agency, mind control.
Be more Ukraine skeptical, more skeptical.
Okay, is this when he calls her a fascist?
Would write like, before the Patriot Act, I read his book, How Would a Patriot Act? It was more of a pamphlet than a long form book, but I read that too. And on the back of it, you don't even have to read the book. You can just see that before the Patriot Act, Glenn described himself as a proud American who thought that his country was mostly on the right track. That is never how.
Oh, we're talking about Glenn Greenwald? God, my computer's...
I'm assuming so.
Not the best source.
I can't even hear it come through because of how lagged it is,
How I would describe American politics. So just because I agree with Glenn, disagree with Glenn, excuse me, just because I disagree with his outlook doesn't make him a grifter. Doesn't make him somebody that has different politics than I do.
Come on.
Yes, it does. I would not frame a lot of the issues the way that Glenn does. I would not interpret a lot of the issues the way that Glenn was. And I would not prioritize issues in the order of operations that Glenn does. But that's why I've never called him a grifter, because I genuinely think he believes this stuff. And that's why it's worthwhile to debate him. It's worthwhile to debate somebody that you massively disagree with, but is speaking from the fucking gut, right? That is telling it like they fucking see it, even if you don't like it. And so that's why I put Sunil.
So here's the thing. Do we double down and start and piss them off enough that they'll come debate us? Or
fucking liar.
Yeah, exactly. And also, one thing I respect about Glenn is that he will always debate the people who he disagrees with.
If there's one thing that you should respect about Glenn, it should be doxing the Queen of Torture, and that's about it.
He's more than happy to explain his viewpoints and how and why he's come to certain opinions that he maybe didn't have a couple of years ago, or why he's evolved in whatever areas he might have evolved in. So, yeah, I do generally respect that quality about Glenn, even though for sure there's a lot of areas of disagreement these days. But yeah, I did want to take a look at some of this breaking points takedown from Vaush, his video where he reacts to their coverage of the Russia-Ukraine situation and calls them fascists. So let's take a look at that and see, whether or not they were actually espousing any fascistic rhetoric.
I'm ready.
My question is whether they would know what a fascist is or not.
Well, that's the thing is like I just by looking at who they like to cover and stuff, I don't think that this is going to be their strongest area. But again, I just gotta compliment Zach. This is showing that he's always attentive and interested. Very, very good. These are fundamentals that we have to do a lot of work to develop in people. I would say the only thing is maybe the NASCAR race, because you do move around a lot, and your mic gets out of position a little bit, and if you just you gotta kind of try to stick on it as much as you can. But again, I understand it's because you're very enthusiastic and stick it to your face. Like Lady Gaga will do on stage, right? She totally does. She sticks the mic to her face. Again, you guys, please call out the fact that
I'll get a look online.
Well, yeah. Well, no, I'm talking about Zach. But guys, please call out the ripped cover of their Matt Taibbi book, please, like I did.
You're obsessed with this book.
In history,
it's just funny. Anyway, this Ron DeSantis questionnaire about why I want to hear about your opinions on Ukraine. It was basically this whole thing where it was basically catered to Ron DeSantis. It was a fake thing that Tucker Carlson did, and Ron DeSantis gave the most tailored response to it. And then Tucker reported on it. It was like a written response you had. Staff do.
No.
Yeah, and it was just so it was so inauthentic. It was a while ago though, obviously.
And he positioned himself. He's been kind of trying to have it both ways in terms of Ukraine, and he's still even with this statement kind of left himself some wiggle room.
Actually, that's true. What was the last thing DeSantis said on Ukraine? I don't hear about his Republicans slammed DeSantis for calling war in Ukraine A territorial dispute. Okay, so he calls it a territorial dispute. He says it's a
I
waste
mean,
of money.
it is.
Yeah, I figure. The far right.
I'd rather.
It's
see,
not the appropriate description, but it is a territorial dispute.
But I'd rather see that than the proxy war thing.
Yes.
If Aaron said it once and not every time he brought up the war in Ukraine, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
You know, obviously wants Russia to win. That's still a more light-handed statement that a lot of the MAGA crowd has made.
Real.
It's literally a territorial dispute. They are disputing territory.
Well,
Freak out
Russia's disputing
among
territory.
a bunch of the Rupert Murdoch properties to
Cool.
Ukraine. He also predicts that Biden will wind up sending warplanes, calling it merely, quote, a question of time. So
correct.
this person is
You know that happened.
says that Trump's views on Ukraine are a geopolitical catastrophe.
Nobody was.
These people don't actually believe
You
in
know, what
democracy.
I wasn't really expecting was the cluster munitions. Also, we've gotten a lot of reports on these cluster munitions, right?
They're being used well.
Really good, because we haven't had this type of data, you know. They've only been used in like a very bad. I mean, I've saw plenty in Syria. Really good at trenches, hitting trenches, and you just like collapse the trench on top of people and stuff. It's really, really good at hitting trenches, and we know how fortified that Russian line is. So if it softens that Russian line and more of these munitions disappear, and then we don't have them anymore, that would be really cool.
That would be cool.
If Donald
Right. Okay. So before we get to that, the Republican position right now has not fully settled, but is largely settling on just being pretty overtly anti-Ukraine and anti-NATO. Fascists have a tendency towards fake isolationism. The problem with being in NATO is that most of the countries in NATO are democracies. Not all of them. Turkey is one of them. We're one of them. No, but like
I don't think that's fair to say to Turkey, especially after the last election we saw. Like, I even think their Freedom House score, it should come up. And I fucking hate Turkey more than any other country on the fucking earth, just because of the fucking government itself. It's fucking awful. They still had a free and fair election. They had runoffs. Erdogan even almost lost because of how his response was to earthquakes. Like Trump lost mainly because of his response to COVID. It could have been almost an identical type thing. The question is if Erdogan lost, what would have happened? Because we have Bolsonaro also tried to do a Jan 6 thing, which is really funny because the police just let him do it and then arrested them all there. They're like, go on in, and then just like waited for it to calm down and then raided him. It was so funny. But like with Turkey, lower freedom score than Nigeria. That's ridiculous. I mean, Nigeria just had an election too. That was fine, and Niger did as well not that long ago. And the president they just disposed. Pretty good for an African president. Yeah, couped, deposed. Oh yeah, you're saying this.
Deposed.
Yeah, you know me. I'm not good. Words don't go good. That's why I have been behind cameras for so long.
If the Republicans win, obviously, like they don't want to be sort of militarily tied.
They did both though, didn't they? They disposed of him. They deposed him.
Yeah, same.
But like the main thing that they criticized him for was that he was not keeping jihadis locked up in prison and torturing them. People are missing that was the main reason that they're saying the coup was for. They're too focused on this Wagner Russia proxy war bullshit, right? And it's so important because everyone is looking at them as they're getting their asses handed to them by getting ambushed by insurgents, constantly being like, I thought you were going to fix this problem. I thought it was his fault.
Bunch of countries that would represent contrary interests.
Okay, can we pause
Right in America are pretty pro-Russia.
We have just dismantled this a million fucking times. Million fucking times.
Guys,
okay.
send me.
I think we've made it pretty
Guys, when you watch this, send me your dismantling of this. Okay, please.
clear. And and obviously I'm not here to fucking simp for Republicans, right? But the idea that you either have to be all out in support of sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukrainian people and risking escalation over what is undeniably a territory.
Okay.
What
Stop.
escalation?
Stop. Okay. All right, guys, go watch Sam Cedar's opinion on this, because Sam Cedar does the left side fence riding really well because he knows what he's doing and knows what he's talking about, and has adjusted his position because he wasn't his audience responded poorly because he was a little too pro-Russia. Not like Hassan, of course, but if you look at Sam Cedars' position, he's saying it's not obscene to question where does it end. You know, do we support Ukraine all the way to Crimea? Do we support them all the way to the Donbass? You know, and he's saying there needs to be, it's not just Sam Cedars specifically, his criticism is it can't be a blank check. He says, where is the line? We need to be critical of when that line ends. We need to be critical of these things. And also, if you know anything about foreign policy, the reason why arms are escalated upward is because if we gave Ukraine enough shit to just steamroll Russia and steamroll into Russia, then we have a non-NATO country that was just able to defeat Russia with those arms. You have to understand that even America is in what would Vaush be defining as a fascist in this situation, because they could do more. They just choose not to.
Historical dispute. People are Poland in 1930s was yes, we have no clout on that. We were not going to get involved in World War II until Pearl Harbor. Okay, we sacrificed like 1 million people in the
Wrong.
So much wrong information.
No. That is the thing is that the American public, if you
Didn't
just
want to go into the war.
Yeah, so if you just modify what you just said just a little bit, and you say the American public was against World War II until Pearl Harbor, especially if you include the American public, was like even pro-Nazi, you know, because you have
Yes.
what's Orwell talks about this, where they talk about how this is where his take on being pacifist is pro-fascist, is he sees all these people saying no war with Germany. Then, you know, the bombing of Berlin or bombing of London happens, right? And like all those people disappeared overnight, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing is going to happen when you see things like Pearl Harbor or 9/11. But the United States was already talking. This is Freedom of Information Act request stuff, guys. I'm not sure how much this is coming through because I know I'm lagging. So
It's
you let
coming
me
through
know.
fine.
Okay, cool. Normally audio is fine. So before the Pearl Harbor is going on, they're talking about how to do psyops, and they even propose a false flag. And the reason why Japan attacks
Dr.
Pearl
Seuss
Harbor,
was a war propaganda.
yeah, but the reason why Japan attacks Pearl Harbor is because they were running out of resources and they needed to invade, I think, Indonesia. And America has already given them a red line, like basically, like you do it and it's over. You're getting a little too expansive in the Pacific. We're gonna have to put you down.
Yeah.
You can't just walk over people like this. So Japan knew that they needed to hit Indonesia, so they made a tactical decision that they said, if we take out America's entire navy before we go to Indonesia,
Just the Pacific Fleet.
yeah, well, yeah, you know, but they didn't get the carriers, and that's why the carrier battles in World War II are super cool. But you know,
There's a cool one off the coast of Queensland. I
the
think it was called the Battle of the Coral Sea or something like that. Sick name.
yeah. The thing is like with the Soviets, right? Especially in Britain, you go back and you look at this pro-Stalin propaganda at the time. It's very funny. Just knowing in hindsight, like the obvious like psyops that happen in these things.
My favorite pictures that I've been seeing are ones of people just like right now with signs and pickets saying peace with Hitler. Peace treaties with Hitler.
Yeah,
it's so funny seeing the parallels, and now they're doing the same with fucking Putin.
The war in Europe, I think, would be a much harder sell to the American people. But at the same time, if you look at the commitment between the Pacific and Europe, I mean, we barely committed to Europe. Thankfully, Hitler invaded Russia. You know.
Yeah.
It was so funny because Stalin was like, no, he didn't.
Game overed himself.
No, he didn't.
Excellent.
Like, they were like, Stalin, he's definitely invaded. Stalin's like, no, he's not.
No, he said he wouldn't. No, we're bros. We shook hands.
I just learned about this movie, right? It's when Gorbachev is around. It's a movie about Stalin when Hitler invades, right? They shoot it in the fucking Kremlin. And it's like a Western movie being shot in the actual Kremlin.
What
and it's
the
like,
hell?
because Gorbachev was in power, and Gorbachev was like, hell yeah, come shoot this in the Kremlin, right? Because Gorby, you know, he's the shit.
Old mate Gorbachev. Sick cunt.
The Philippines during World War II, we didn't give a fuck about the Nazis until it started to fuck up our economy. Okay, do you guys not understand that the United States has
incorrect information?
Like I said, if he redirected his take here, just to frame it as the public instead of the government, he would be a little bit more on point.
Never once acted in virtue. We have never once acted for the greater good. It's all about rich fuckers getting richer. That's why we had our revolution in the first place, the sugar tax, okay?
I will debate you on the American Revolution if you really want to get into a debate. That is something I can attend, actually, and down to debate, is the American Revolution. Come at me.
Let me remind everybody
Sugar
that the
tax.
working man was not paying that sugar tax in the way that they fucking tell you about all the time, right? It was the fucking aristocrats not wanting to pay their tax on rum distillation was a big part of it. Anyway,
No.
it was not the issue that makes it, and this is the exact same deal. They're trying to frame it as if you don't want to send your tax dollars to liberate another country over there, as if that's you becoming a fascist. That's you letting Hitler thrive. Do you know who else they said that about? Saddam Hussein, okay? Vaush would be sitting here telling us that we all hate Iraqi young.
The difference is, specifically when it comes to Saddam, America specifically is responsible for his actions more than I would put Saddam as accountable for his actions. You do not have Saddam Hussein and the genocide without our weapons.
Yes.
And that is a war where you can also bring up that they played both sides of the Iran-Iraq war. Nothing ethical was done with Saddam Hussein before and after the war. Never. Not once. There was never an ethical decision when engaging with Saddam. Maybe the sanctions, and then people will be like, sanctions killed 1 million Iraqis. Shut up. Read a book. Saddam was so paranoid, it's funny. How terrified he was of death. Way more paranoid than Putin and Gaddafi. It was so funny.
Yeah. Who was the one with the personal guard that was all women? It's like Gaddafi.
That's Gaddafi, yeah.
Women, and that we want them to not go to school, and that we want them to be raped and beheaded and live in Sharia law because we aren't feminists and we don't care about.
Okay, hang on. I gotta hear these.
What the fuck just happened?
Gotta hear these opinions on.
Okay, can we pause
Far right
this?
in America are pretty pro-Russia.
You're gonna point out that Europe is turning far right because of the war in Ukraine, right, guys?
Okay, do you guys not understand that the United States has never once acted in virtue? We have never once acted for the greater good. It's
Protecting
all
America's
about rich
interests.
fuckers
That's what
getting
they've always
richer.
said.
That's why we had our revolution in the first place.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, it's like, I wouldn't don't make affirmative statements like that, because there are situations where like America was like, hey, that was like everyone liked that,
Yeah.
I mean, even relief, like a lot of relief, there's no like economic benefit on the long run, other than like, hey, the quicker they get back to work, the quicker we get paid. It's not really like that. That's not really the motivation. There is some human empathy about some of these things.
It was not the issue that makes it, and this is the exact same deal. They're trying to frame it as if you don't want to send your tax dollars to liberate another country over there, as if that's you becoming a fascist.
That's quite a way to twist it.
So if Vaush was around in 2003, he would say that you guys want women to live in Sharia law because you're not backing the tax dollars going to Ukraine. And
I think
that
that's what
you guys don't want girls to go to school. Okay. Now, Iraq and Afghanistan are different countries with different issues, for starters. So the whole thing about the women under Sharia and all that stuff, that's Afghanistan, not Iraq. If Vaush said that to you, he would be really stupid, because the whole reason why the insurgency, which is not al-qeada, the Iraqi people who had every right to fight back against the state of oppression being coming in by America, right? They took over schools, and those people protested that the Americans were shutting down their schools and not letting their daughters go to school. Literally, that is the case of it. And they shot these people who were protesting, right? That's how the Blackwater Bridge incident happens, which leads to the first Battle of Fallujah, which destroys the city, lets in al-Qaeda run rampant through the city. It's then protected by a force that Noor Maliki puts in there. He's like, hey, I'm going to make our own like security force, like Iraqi security force. Whatever, fuck off, right? And then the second Battle of Fallujah happens. It's fucking brutal. Fallujah will never be the same again, because even the spillover into Mosul has forever changed that city. Like, these were great cities once upon a time. Point is that Vaush would be really stupid if he said that to you, because that's not what the situation was in Iraq. The neocons would say dumb shit like that, but Vaush would not be a neocon at the time. But I could see him as far as like the invasion, right? Like having a Christopher Hitchens type standpoint where it's like Saddam committed genocide, he's got to go, which is objectively correct. But
Yeah.
look at the cost of it. His daddy should have killed him, but they were like, hey, we don't want to lose an election.
United States citizens have to send their fucking tax money over there instead of getting roads fixed, instead of having health care, instead of getting people out of medical debt, etc.
You getting health care has nothing to do with military spending, by the way, just so you guys know. You hear a lot.
Shh, don't tell them that.
That the tax dollars going to Ukraine is why you don't have healthcare. It's a funny joke. It's a funny meme where you'll see like the B2 like just annihilated shit. And be like, this is why you don't have healthcare. Or like
it is a good meme.
The video where they're like, this is what real superpowers do. Nobody show Russia. It's just the like dispatchment of the Persian Gulf War.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, this is why you don't have tax dollars. So why you don't have tax dollars, or not tax dollars, healthcare. Sorry.
We have to be escalating with another nuclear superpower.
I wouldn't exactly call Russia a superpower.
Crash.
Who is pissed off that we violated basically every fucking treaty we've ever had.
Oh, come on.
Wrong.
Fairly obvious reasons. It's the same reason that they liked Boris Johnson, the same reason they liked Bolsonaro. I mean, it's the same reason they like Putin. They spent most of Trump's presidency sucking him off, right? Like I remember there were like T-shirts, better Russian than Democrat or something. It's the whole thing, you know. Far right people tend to like far right people.
That seems very
Go
friendly.
back to World War II. Hitler paired up with Mussolini, sure, but also with Japan. You know, the Nazis, a European society, you know, political force with racial supremacist overtones, paired up with Japan. Different race of people. Yeah, they called them honorary Aryans. Far right dictators just tend to like far right dictators.
Donald J. Trump.
I remember when General Patton said about Hitler, we killed the wrong guy, as in we should have been fighting Stalin.
What the fuck?
Says that Trump's views on Ukraine are a
now
geopolitical
everyone's
catastrophe.
rewinding.
These people.
The
don't actually believe in
reexception is
democracy.
backfiring.
What?
If Donald J. Trump.
Not half, then a quarter. Only
This
a
one
quarter of
poll
the
is
country
indicative
saying
of
that we're
every poll. That's horseshit. I can
It's Pew Research. Shut up.
find a poll that says fucking anything, Vaush. I can find
Pew Research Center, bitch.
a poll that says literally anything. I bet you Sagar has a poll he's referencing too. You just decided not to pull it up anyway.
No, he's just saying that 50% of the country is Republican, and the mainstream Republican agenda is that Ukraine bad. But the thing is that Sagar is stupid, and you know this because if you look at his coverage of the Joe Biden election, it was so funny because I called the exact score. Because I just looked at a lot of analysis and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, the polls are worthless. I'm never looking at polls again." It's like, well, you're looking at bad polls, dude.
As it relates to this proxy war.
Okay, I got to put the dunce hat on, guy. He said I called it a proxy war.
I'm sorry, but there's a lot of territorial disputes going on around the globe, and there's a lot of humanitarian atrocities going on around the globe.
Like what?
How many are Russia connected to?
Go ahead. Like what? Where give me a border dispute, and then you tell me where. Now let me know what those atrocities are. The rate that's happening in Ukraine. Boy, I mean, I sure tried to get everyone's attention in Syria, but
most of those humanitarian atrocities America NATO. Funds and facilitates. If you look at what's happening in Palestine, for example,
okay, good job.
What's happening in Libya, we have no moral high ground to stand on.
What do you mean? What's happening in Libya?
I don't think he knows.
Who do you think is in? It's Turkey and Russia in Libya, guy. And also, no, America did not start the conflict in Libya. You know, I'm pretty sure it is true that Hillary was like, "Bomb them, bomb them." You know, she's jumping up in the background, like, "It's time to bomb them." She said like some horrific shit about Libya. She has like no. Is that playing at all? I can't tell. It's just crazy.
Dar, zanga, zanga, ferd.
Like when somebody is saying that type of rhetoric, that they're literally like, tomorrow I'm committing a genocide.
Yeah.
And then France is like, you don't go, hey, America, it's your fault the country is in this position. You know, there's two parties that you can blame there, right? One, if you're an idiot, France, and two, if you actually understand the situation, Gaddafi, don't do genocide, and then maybe you won't get airstrikes. I mean, like nobody was gonna fuck with Gaddafi. I mean, just look at Assad. Assad knows. Why do you think Idlib still stands the way it is today, right?
And again, most Americans, if they could switch or snap their finger and make Russia retreat? Would they do it? Of course, I would do it. But does that mean that I think we should expend hundreds and hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars in the pursuit of staving off Russia, when in reality all we're doing is increasing tensions and furthering World War III's possibility
Russia
of happening?
increased the
No, I
tensions,
don't think
my
that's
guy.
the right policy. And most
Shut up. I'd rather it be spent on the defense of Ukraine than the destruction of Iraq.
Americans
Yeah.
are starting to catch up and believe the same thing.
Because look, I'm all for deflating the military budget, guys. Like I'm with you on this. All right. The only way, realistically, to go forward where it's going to happen is by through the Progressive Caucus and backing the Progressive Caucus and making sure that the Progressive Caucus House members are then being upgraded to the Senate. Like backing Katie Porter right now, to take Dianne Feinstein's seat. Dianne Feinstein, also, even though she has got some bad takes on a lot of stuff, she's the reason why we know about the extent of the CIA's torture. So the thing is that the military budget you can say, yes, the military budget is bad. You should just not even bother adding it to your rhetoric about like anything about we're spending too much on Ukraine, too much military, too much that. They don't give a fuck. All right. They do not give a fuck. Not a dime is coming out of that military budget. That's not why you don't have healthcare. That's not why you don't have healthcare. I mean, look at the infrastructure budget that Biden had. He didn't do that by taking money away from the military.
Yeah, absolutely.
That we're giving them too much support. Man, look at how rapidly there was this shift in the Republican. How a year ago, half of them. What? Guys, the former NATO chief literally just said it would be bad for Ukraine's victory in the war effort if they were to succeed in the primaries. Breaking Points is obviously going to be pro-Russia, but where justify it? Sell me on it. What? How?
Also, this so annoying with Vaush, and people do this on both sides of this argument. To be fair, people on the on both sides, whether you think we should give them more money or whether you think we should give them no money. It's like,
again, the real enlightened one understands and knows that we actually do not give a fuck in this situation at the end of the day. This could be over. Like, how Trump is like, I'll end the war tomorrow, Unironically could happen. Come on. Also the counter narrative. They did this to the Soviets, Afghanistan, where it's like, oh, they're trying to bleed Russia. No, it's more like they're bleeding Ukraine. Ukraine has also earned more packages than like anyone has ever been able to do because of their effectiveness. And the thing is that the key thing in Ukraine that's a serious problem now is that like literally the worst units you had, the convicts being used in like the ratio of Russian losses, but the cost of Ukrainian personnel, how when we're talking about the controversial Azov battalion in Mariupol, like they held that as long as they could, but like so many of them captured and died. Like Ukraine has lost a lot of its best people, and like there's this whole thing where people try to say that Russia's not sending their best. Shut the fuck up. Russia has also lost a lot of their best people.
Not wanting America to send money to Ukraine, not thinking that America should or thinking that America should not get involved in this conflict is not the same thing as being pro-Russia, right? It's just not, and like you shouldn't have to.
Kind of is being not wanting to help Ukraine defend itself is kind of being pro-Russia.
And also weapons. We're sending weapons, not really that much. I mean, there is
if Russia was to take Ukraine, right? If Russia was to take Ukraine, the next thing that he would do is whinge about how NATO is on Russia's borders.
Okay, so the best thing happened about the situation in Ukraine is that Putin has been checked for once. Because we didn't put him in check in Georgia, we certainly didn't do it in Syria or Chechnya, where it should have happened to begin with. The only time we've ever fucked with the Soviet Union was in the fucking Afghanistan invasion. And everyone wants to criticize that based move, too. We should have given them stingers a lot sooner. But no, it's more that one is more complicated. That they try to say it was bleeding. They didn't even have the AKs to give them. They really didn't want to risk an escalation back then. Back then, the Soviet Union could have actually done something. It was more than just Russia. But now, if Russia took Ukraine, I mean, we've already seen that their plans that they want to go to the up to say Serpentencia, but it's what's the Transnistria? They were saying that they were going to go there next. We saw their war plans, right? And then we know that the Baltic states are extremely worried because there's that little Russian enclave over that little
between Poland and Russia,
in the Baltic states. there's that little piece of Russia that's over by the Baltic states. We saw people joining NATO because they're like, hey, we're right on these guys' borders. So not putting Putin in check again would have been devastating. The thing is that the real battle at the end of the day that's likely going to be waged here in the long run is against Putin's ego. And that's where the real tragedy lies, in the amount of Ukrainian lives that have to be lost to do that.
Yeah.
And it's not like not doing anything would like save Ukrainian lives regardless at this point. Maybe if we stopped him at Chechnya and put a precedent back then when we had the power.
Say that. Obviously there should be some level of nuance that's factored in to these decisions.
You know why it didn't happen? Because the United States is pro multipolar world. And they thought that Russia would be, after Gorbachev, great guy, they're like, hey, it can't be, much worse. Russia's going to be fine, right? They had the same thing with Deng Xiaoping, right? America wants a multipolar world. It's Russia,
They're
China,
sick of
all
being
them.
the only.
They're
They're sick of holding everything up.
The people who claim to be pro multipolar, they just want to be the new king.
Discussions. Just because I don't support sending, $100 fucking billion of taxpayer money to any given country does not mean that I am against that country, or it does not mean that I stand in solidarity with them in any given conflict. Yeah, I'm sure that there are countries around the world where you can make a compelling case for why they need our military aid, and why that would be in the interest of a humanitarian cause. But does that think that I should play does that mean that I think America should play the role of the world police? Just because you've made a convincing case of why one country is embroiled.
World police. One of the hardest things for me, because especially specializing in atrocities and genocide, things like that, Tigray, for example.
Yeah.
Hong Kong is another one as well. That was really hard to see. Who do you think is the first people that people online start asking for help when a genocide happens? Who do you think they say first? Do you think they say Russia? Where's Russia? Russia, help us, stop the genocide,
Oh, they go to America.
Yeah, they go to America, the one that tries to sell like they're the moral arbiters of the world, which is such horseshit, right? So when it comes down to arguments of a humanitarian interest, it's just not there. There would be so many. We would have killed Assad so long ago if we cared about humanitarian interest. We would not stand for what's going on in Tigray if we cared about humanitarian interest. We would not have bombed Waziristan with these strikes to the degree that we did. We would not have given Musharraf complete carte blanche to just destroy Fatah, right? He committed war crimes. He leveled that whole area like Assad be leveling his cities. And it's not like the terrorists weren't helping in that. They were. I mean, they're kind of kicking Pakistan's ass now because Pakistan is not doing these genocide ops against them anymore. And America is not answering the phone with Pakistan. They're so sick of them. The moral position should be your last argument, is the point.
Build in some sort of humanitarian.
Same with the whole they're defending democracy. Shut the fuck up.
That doesn't mean I think we should play the fucking world police, and it's no different here. I am pro Ukraine. I think that
there is no
Putin's invasion of Ukraine is unjustified.
But
it's a humanitarian atrocity. Somewhere like 20 or 30,000 civilians have been slaughtered in Ukraine thanks to Russia's invasion, and that's not even considering all of the Russian and Ukrainian soldiers, just innocent working class people that have been murdered as a result of this conflict.
But
that doesn't mean I think America should be getting involved either, right? Two things can be true at once.
Especially because America has a fucking horrid track record of being the world police, right? This is the guy that argued. You guys who are in our chat being like, you guys fucking let Hitler take over. Zach is a fascist sympathizer. I'm like, whatever. But this is the same man who told you that it was actually ethical for us to do drone strikes in the Middle East. That's the guy who you're getting your foreign policy and
sometimes
side from. Okay, this guy that was like, well, at least American troops aren't dying over there. No, fucking a bunch of innocent civilians are over there. He
could care less if American troops die. I do care more about the civilian casualties, but I also care about the long-term goals. Why is this bomb dropped? For example, when the IRGC proxy group bombed Howler, Kurdistan, and Biden responded by bombing 2 IRGC targets in Syria, which is just so funny. That was cool. That's one of the good ones. Qasem Soleimani based Trump. I think they also like bombed like Delta went in there as well, but they destroyed like the ISIS leaders thing. I think they drone striked him and sent Delta in. He's the thing is they could have bombed the whole thing, but he sent Delta in because he wanted his like Zero Dark 30 moment.
Tried to tell his audience that it was actually targeted and efficient to do drone strikes, something that is objectively untrue, right? Vaush,
it's not objectively untrue, but there's a lot of questions to be asked, and it's how you consume the data sets, right? So we can see that terrorism goes down when it's the drone strikes hit their height, right? And then terrorism starts dropping as drone strikes start dropping. But there's also like other factors in play there. Muz Sharif, just slaughtering, I mean, they did let the civilians evac, and a lot of people did, but who knows? That's what we'll never know, is when we give authority to things like Golden Division, who are way more based than the PMF, of course, and we authorize them to use white phosphorus on ISIS targets.
Very cool.
We take the blame, but they authorize that shit, And Golden Division certainly does not obey international law.
No.
It's like we're going to turn to Golden Division before America gets tied up in something, right? That's the real like proxy force type situation that we're talking about, is those types of ops that we'll never know. And first of all, and if we want to do a whole whataboutism, we can just be like, well, Wagner, but that's not the point.
Who is pro-peace, who is pro-diplomacy, who is pro-de-escalation, who is like, no, I'm not sending any more weapons over there, but I'm happy to send blankets and food and
not sending weapons. Is
okay,
not de-escalation.
Yeah, blankets. That will stop the war in Ukraine. Blankets.
Not sending weapons is not a de-escalation. Not sending weapons is technically an escalation for Russia.
Fucking forever. Okay, and we're not going to go over there and play the world policeman, okay, and try and negotiate this, because we have no fucking credibility. We have done illegal offensive invasions left and right. We are only interested in our own extraction. And guess what, guys? We're only interested in Ukraine for the natural resources. And
guys, the State Department would love nothing more than to just not have to answer the phone from Ukraine, right? Like the whole thing where they're like, my thumb is a CIA coup. Boy, like I guarantee there's people in America be like, please, God, no, please, just don't overthrow the government, guys. Don't overthrow the government. We'd have to get so much work. We're trying to fucking do this over here. We can't afford to do this in Ukraine.
And the position, the
thing is, it's like they're close, and they're not nuanced enough, and they're young, so it's totally excusable. And I don't mean that in any, like, young people can be very informed, but there's a lot of context that's not there. Anti-war specifically, anti-war is like the whole movement is, and I know because I was like a part of it. It was led by people who believed Jews did 9/11, guys. Like
political positioning that it provides.
And again,
us. Just like
I always say this. Nobody is pro-war. The only time you're pro-war is right up until you invade. Immediately after the invasion, it's when does the war end? The whole take to like frame anyone as pro-war is just unrealistic. Everyone is anti-war. Everyone wants to avoid war, obviously.
Arguing that we actually really care about the people of Israel. We don't give a fuck about the people of Israel.
Correct.
We don't give a fuck about.
Correct. But the thing is that Israel has a lot of lobbying money in the establishment, in our political establishment. They're actually undermining our democracy. So, I mean, you look at South Africa. That's the argument of boycott, divestment, sanction. Right? It's like South Africa sanctions worked. And that's the thing is that Israel knows this. So Israel has spent a lot of resources influencing American politics. If you look at who's the labor guy in UK, the Assadist.
Yeah, Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn, right? He was critical on Israel, and then all of a sudden the entire party is anti-Semitic. When you look at some of these squad members that are just slightly critical, that say Palestinians deserve human rights. Oh, it looks like somebody's a fascist and wants to make out with Hitler over here. Like, Israel has set it up in a position, and this is why Abby Martin is based and why I'll stick up for her, even though she is totally an enemy agent. She is 100% right in this situation. She has won lawsuits on college campuses that say that you cannot be critical of Israel, and they've not let her spoken about those campuses. She sued them and won because it violates the First Amendment. She's fucking awesome for that. So that's the thing, is like, you need to understand how deeply ingrained and how inauthentic so much of this is, especially with fucking Israel.
About Jewish people writ large in this country. Have you looked at?
And also, I just want to state that
God,
a majority of Palestinians that I talk to, I don't like because they're pro-Assad. So, but still, guess who's going to defend their human rights? This guy.
Our fucking history, okay? We care about having a fucking global positioning point in the Arab world that we control, and we carved it out for ourselves after the Ottoman.
Yeah, so Israel is actually the one who really, like, we only cared about the like Arab-Israeli wars on a matter of like the Soviets were back, some of their opposition and things like that. It's purely, as far as that history goes, it's purely an anti-Soviet position, never a pro-Israel position.
Yeah.
Then Israel, we were critical on Israel, so Israel started investing in us to make sure that those critical points would stop. So it's actually reverse. So they radicalize these Christians and like are like, hey, Israel is like dependent on you supporting them, Christians. They knew how to attack the fundamentalist base because they're already attracting the Zionist fundamentalist base. Yes. So it's the other way around.
It's a really, really, really key indicator.
I guarantee there's so many people in the U.S. government that fucking, I mean, even Biden has recognized that it's a fascist state with fucking Netanyahu in power right now. You know, there's so many people that fucking don't like it. And they just can't do anything because you lose votes. You lose an election if you're anti-Israel. It's just how it is. So they maintain their power.
Wild. You're listening to a propagandist or to a conspiracy theorist. Incredible how Mike Pence was the vice president of Donald Trump, and now he's a rhino and a neocon just because he didn't, I don't know, allow the Jan 6 people to decapitate him or whatever. Like, it's just because he wasn't allowed to deny.
Tucker Carlson
he literally could not stop the certification on January 6th. Because he didn't do the impossible thing.
So he like came out. So you know how this whole thing, the information warfare thing, that like they're targeting Christians, like they're outlawing the church, when it's really like these people are like pro-Russian pedos, you know, that they're targeting. Right, so that's what. So Tucker Carlson like softballed everyone else in the night, and then it got to Pence, and he wouldn't let this go. It's like, why don't you care about the Christians in Ukraine? Why don't you care about the Christians in Ukraine? And Mike Pence does not have like, it's a presidential thing. It's like you can't like break down like how complex. He was too pro-Ukraine for Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson likes that Putin money.
Now he gets to be like a rhino neocon. They wanted to hang him, right? Yeah, they did.
Which there is a one-to-one relationship for the U.S. and anyone else. So their inability to articulate it that way is fundamentally anti-democratic, and it reminds me of the way that
this is just jargon. It's incoherent jargon. Somebody saying, "Hey, it'd be bad." Who would have guessed that people involved in international military and economic oversight would not like Trump with his retarded faux isolationism? Who could? Damn, a bunch of professional bureaucrats don't like when a blubbering retard becomes the commander in chief. Wow, that's damn. That's crazy, dog. The person who is openly like anti-NATO.
In the
Atlantic
religion of basically what I've been starting to call it, in terms of their pledging support to Ukraine and all that, between hawkishness on Ukraine and dovishness on Ukraine, it would be a very easy vote for a lot of podcasts, frankly, including me. And
I hate those
think
terms
again,
so much.
like 25% of Americans think we're giving too much aid. He's completely making up. Also,
that is such okay.
DeSantis is losing for
pause this shit really quickly. Now, Vaush, I guarantee you, like, he doesn't want to acknowledge the fact that it's actually popular that we decrease militaristic spending, right? So, and also, Vaush, if you're listening, you're not
100%. I guarantee you, Vaush is actually like, oh, it would be good to decrease the military and intervention. I guarantee you, he has that like basic position because like most people are going to say that.
But just in case you were, let me explain to you how polling works. Okay, polling.
Can you believe it? Vaush is totally wouldn't say that he's against violence.
Is very, very malleable. Depending on how I ask a question, I will get a massively different outcome. Do you know what is true indisputably? That the number of Americans who think we're spending too much money on the military is going right up. Okay. And I also just found a poll when I was Googling around that said 40.
This is rhetoric that's existed since I was in college, for sure. I mean, since I've been in high school, even.
32%. Okay, not 20. Like, hey, man, would you rather have a robust healthcare system that doesn't put a bunch of Americans into bankruptcy, or would you rather participate in the liberation of a country that you cannot point to on a map? it's a different outcome. Certainly.
Why can't Americans point to countries on the map, guys?
Good question.
Why does America show continued geopolitical ignorance that has made them so susceptible to information warfare? These have roots even before my time, like in the Cold War, because of all the shit that America was doing. They had to they were so afraid that they'd have shut everyone out.
Certainly a different outcome.
Yeah, 100%. And if in fact,
and again, I say this all the time, Americans would be so powerful if they knew what the fuck they were talking about for once.
Stop funding this proxy war.
Stop.
It's in the best interest of humanity that we do not escalate with Russia, another nuclear armed superpower who's clearly, a belligerent force in the region.
Yes, Trump, my red button is bigger than his, definitely doesn't escalate nuclear tensions.
And is unpredictable as far as what lengths they're willing to go to. Maybe we should take a more diplomatic approach. Maybe we should not try to solve this with military means.
What do you think Angela Merkel has been doing for the last fucking decade? More diplomatic approach. We have delayed this war in Ukraine since 2014. That's impressive. It's really impressive how late. Now the real question is, you see it all the time right now where they're like, oh, they're egging on China with this defensive thing. With China's economic crash right now, if these investments didn't happen that we see, like the outer rings and stuff like that, we would see much more of a likely invasion of Taiwan right now.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to think about too, is what is diplomacy? Is it just talking in a room? No, there's a part of it where the whole NATO trope of peace through overwhelming firepower, right? And we've seen this happen multiple times. ECOWAS, the last Niger coup, ECOWAS rolled in and said, hey, look at how many more guns we have than you. And they said, you know what? Fuck it. Yeah, you guys are good. We're not going to do this. They backed off, and that's what happened. And that's the whole point of a nuclear threat. That's the whole reason why we have nuclear subs underneath China. We're putting them in the Northland. It's not because these nukes are going to be used on like Beijing or anything like that. Like, that's just crazy. It's just there to deterrence, right? And you have to sometimes do kind of violent shit to deter shit,
et cetera, et cetera. Then they would be.
You'll never know how long you prevent war.
You're correct about that.
Just like just like red
Donald
flag
Trump.
laws. We have no idea how many mass shootings they've prevented.
Trump, I hate the Republicans, and that personally definitely wouldn't be enough to make me want to vote for someone like Donald Trump. I'm not going to fucking co-sign Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. I'm not pulling the lever for those guys. But if they're right about that one specific narrow policy position, then I'll give them credit. I'm not going to lie and pretend that they're incorrect just because they're Republicans. Like, no, I'll say, yeah, damn, they're right about that. And Joe Biden or whoever the Democrat nominee is should embrace that position as well.
If I thought like that, I'd be like, I probably need to do research for a Republican why I'm agreeing with Donald Trump on something.
Be more pro-peace than you are. And that's disgraceful. That's a position that no Democrat should find themselves in. I do think by 2024 will be the increasingly popular position that we should not be involved in this conflict. Most people are worried about war. People don't want to live in an era of fucking paranoia about world war and nuclear conflict. This is not something that people want to deal with right now.
Only people who are uninformed are worried about nuclear
really
war.
The only one pushing that is Putin, who wants that fear to still exist, is Putin.
Oh, absolutely. And in the same way that just because Donald Trump was rhetorically talking about how NATO sent a bunch of a bunch of American jobs overseas doesn't mean that NATO, LOL, NAFTA. I've fucking words salad over here, but NAFTA sent a bunch of fucking jobs overseas. Like, should Joe Biden's response or Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders' response been, no, guys, sending jobs overseas it's based, bro. I think it's great for American companies if we can pay people 10 cents a day and no bathroom breaks overseas.
I'm sorry for pausing, but I just want to point out we've watched this. Right? I've shown you the debate between Obama and Mitt Romney, and how the whole time they're like, yeah, I agree with him on basically everything he's saying, except for one thing. Like this whole polarization with Trump, guys, it didn't exist a long time ago. Like that. This is a very recent phenomena, and it will be a very temporary phenomenon. That much.
America should not be involved. That America's involvement is bringing us closer to the brink of world war with a nuclear-armed superpower.
There he goes again.
That most reasonable people.
This is a post thing, like where their tracks are being normalized automatically, like the program's doing the normalization.
Should be avoided at all costs. Absolutely, 100%. I think that's very well said.
They don't use.
Anyway,
the
we did get a
font that
couple
use.
super chats to get into.
Okay, so after all that, we've come to the conclusion that Vaush never said she was a fascist.
I never heard it. No.
Didn't they show a clip?
Well,
Or they just showed the title. They just showed the title.
If you go a little bit forward, you see the segment ends, and that's where it says responding to calling her a fascist.
No,
Keep going back. Yeah, the whole thing. There. That's where it ends. So maybe it was there.
Well, we watched it before, right?
Yeah, I didn't hear fascist at all.
Right. Which Vaush doesn't do his title. And I think the stream that they were pulling from, the stream was like something like, I'm drunk as fuck. Was that this one? No, this was drone ones. Sorry, the opinions are all the same, so they start to bleed together. But
They
yeah.
blur together, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is like, he never called her a fascist.
Never heard it, no.
Yeah, the title said that their take was pro-fascist, which it is. This is a basic Orwellian concept that Vaush definitely agrees with. Okay, guys. See you later. So long.